Okay, good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. This is the Building and Finance Subcommittee. I will call this meeting to order and remind everyone that the mission for Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings such that an in-person meeting of the school committee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. This is a subcommittee meeting, so there is no reason for people to, there's no opening for people to call in to this meeting. And Maria will need a roll call attendance.
Kathy Clancy,
Here.
Mr. Pope,
Here.
Mr. Favazza.
Here.
Thank you. Okay.
Sam and Melissa are in attendance, but not at the dais. Is that kind of a quorum? I don't know.
We have 2 school committee members signed into the call. Sam Watson and Laura Weeson.
No, Melissa.
Oh, and Melissa. No,
Just Melissa and Sam.
Melissa. Oh, sorry, Melissa Teixeira Prince and Sam Watson, Berga Watson. Just so people know for the record. Okay, first item of business is the fiscal 22 budget update, the current fiscal year that we are in now.
Okay. We pull, can you do the slide or the presentation?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
1 second here.
No one can see it yet. See it.
Yes.
Good, Gary.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to start our presentation with the first agenda item, which is the budget update. If you can turn to the next slide.
There you go.
Okay, when looking through the budget, and we have in the budget, in the board packet, or school committee packet, the year-to-date budget report. On that report, I've highlighted some salary accounts. And if you can see the salaries post-budget, so we approved the budget in June. And then there has been new hires, and we compare the actual hires to our budget, and we noticed that we had some savings from our budget that was approved, and that is from we budget replacement teachers at $61,000 for those teachers that resigned or retired, and comparing the actual salaries to the budget, we saw some savings. We added up all the savings for all the different hires, and we came up with $228,000. So at this time, we're projecting that will be $228,000 under budget and salary account for the year.
So on this slide, positive numbers are savings, negative numbers are overruns.
Negative numbers are yes,
Okay.
or additional expenditures.
Okay.
We had some additional expenses, transfers, and we'll go over those transfers at upcoming agenda item number 7. Health insurance, please keep in mind the health insurance budget is $5.7 million. And we budgeted real close to the 5.7 million. We're over by about 50,000. And that was new hires. To put that into context, we're about 1% over the budget. So 1% on 57,000 is 5.7 million is 57,000. We're just shy of the 1%. Note that in the approved budget, there's a contingency for the school committee of 200,000. We haven't touched that yet. In order to expend from that, we'll need to come to the school committee B&F and ask for an action item. Special education tuition, a placeholder of $700,000. There's a lot of changes throughout the year, and because it's can change, one student can affect that number up to 100,000. We have built into the budget 700,000. When you add up all those, the 228,000 of salaries better than budgeted, and the 200 and the 700 less the transfers and overrun of health insurance, we're at about $1 million. So projecting for the end of year, we're a range of $0 to $1 million. And that $1 million is subjected to, how we do throughout the year on special ed tuition, as well as the school committee contingency, are two of the large numbers that we have built into the budget. So the next slide.
Any questions on those?
I am wondering if we have an idea historically how much we've used of the contingency for the past couple of years. We've used clearly some of it every year for various things that come up. So we know that that number is, as you say, like the best scenario, not the likely scenario, somewhere in between.
Yes, and the placeholders and contingency are there for a reason, because we know that expenses do occur throughout the year. And so, yeah, it's not expected that we'll have, those amounts untouched at year end.
Do you want to, can we get to you? So the question, Kathy, was just some
No, I'm just
historical?
pointing it out.
Okay.
That
great.
200 is, kind of just the budget, but we usually use
Yeah,
that for certain things that come up.
So the education tuition might be helpful to know a little bit more about how that happens year to year. It's possible this year that we will have more, we'll use that more than we have in the past for a variety of reasons, some which are actually COVID related in terms of support for some of our special education students.
So I understand the historic reasons why we have these contingencies and these placeholders. Curious whether for this year, does this still make sense given that, there was all that extra infusion of money last year that's running through this year, and there's one more round of like extra money being infused in? Are we still so concerned about running these, $1 million essentially potential, backup, knowing that ESSER 2 is still coming in and ESSER 3 hasn't even started yet, right? Is there any offset there where we go, well, if stuff gets tough, we can pull from this line item because ESSER will backfill it, and instead of keeping these sequestered, or is it still like the apples and oranges? Will ESSER not save us from these expenses through creative budgeting?
I would say that this year is different than last year. This year, we don't have a remote academy. So the remote academy, we used a lot of ESSER funds for that. And then some positions from the remote academy were not backfilled. And so that created some additional savings in the operating fund. We're not having that scenario this year, so we don't expect that same occurrence to occur. There could be some minor expenses that are picked up through the ESSER funds, but we've been working with the IT department and indicating that if there is something picked up, that would be additional funds in your budget to expend.
Right, so we're getting at is, are there items in the operating fund that otherwise would qualify to be paid for by ESSER? And in that case, can those be, reduced in anticipation and then pushed over,
Well, so a couple things. Just like last year at this point, we didn't know what was to come, and we incurred from where we were in September of last year to then what happened in the springtime, and that was a positive, right? But it still was a cost a fair bit of money, right? For a variety of things, including things like the floor covering downstairs, right? So, and we were actually in a pretty similar position a year ago as this, in terms of, this is just to project your year-end savings at this point, obviously is, sure, you understand, right? We all understand, like, it's very important that, like, that's a number that's out there, but it's gonna change a lot. And last year, as we know, changed a whole bunch. So there are certainly things in the operating budget. I mean, because ESSER is pretty broad, okay, there's certainly things that can happen in the operating budget that are in the operating budget that can be funded by ESSER, okay? Whether or not we want to continue, we've actually transferred some of that stuff. If we, for example, summer, not only the expand summer programs, but the existing summer programs are sort of covered by ESSER, so that's an example, right? So I think there's possibility of continuing to do some of that. But we have to sort of, I guess I'm wary of transferring more off the operating budget and having too much of a surplus at the end of the year. So we expect some savings because we are in a process of continuing to prepay special education, but I guess we don't want to go too far above. I'm just sort of conscious of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we run a higher, surplus. What I'm suggesting is that, we make hay while the sun is shining as a community that historically receives a lousy share of, state funds.
Right.
If we have opportunity, if there are any items in the operating budget that could be, taken care of by ESSER, I would hope that we are taking advantage of that, freeing up those funds to do one-time things, and use, again, the silver lining of the terrible stuff we're going through is like, okay, well, COVID sucked, but ESSER funds came in, we didn't have to pay for X, Y, and Z like we usually do. We took all the X, Y, and Z money instead of surplusing it, took care of these, items that we've been trying to purchase since 2013 or something. You know what I'm trying to say here? I feel like a couple things. I know that we've added some positions that we've wanted to have. Sure. Interventions at the middle school, BCBA, for example, a middle school instructional coordinator to really ramp up the focus on instruction there with ESSER. Okay. Our intent is the highest priority of those positions as we go forward with any increases, that we move some of those over to operating, okay, for the long term, okay? But we'll do that, year by year. So I guess what I'm answering is, like, I think we're doing that already. Okay. I think it's the right question is, can we do it more, and how does that go as the year goes along? As we further define ESSER, and also honestly, there are more needs that are coming our way. Like, for example, just learned this yesterday, and I'll report more to the school committee on Wednesday. Like, we're going through masks at the high school at a much higher rate than last year. Okay, not that masks are a big ticket item, and we have certainly, but they're an important item, they're an essential item, right, to running a school these days. But it's something that, like, we didn't necessarily expect or know to anticipate. But I think there'll be more of those things. It could be positions for certain for at different levels. It could be more health and safety stuff. So I think that's a way of saying we're going to see how it develops, and we'll keep reporting. But I think it's a good question for us to keep on asking. Actually,
I do think there's definitely importance to having our budget be what we've historically had in the operating budget as well, so that we continue with the practice of what we've budgeted, and then know some of it's done by grant, right? So that we keep an eye on that analytically as the year goes on, so that when we say what's kind of our ongoing budget the
Commitment.
term we want, level service budget, right? You wouldn't want to have this
Come and shower.
be more gobbledygook and in and out as more than you need to, right? So,
Yeah, we're, to just add on to what Kathy had said, we were very mindful of the funding cliff. Because these funds are here for 3 years.
Right,
And then after that, they're
it's back to normal. And
it's back to, so we're very careful about what we take away from the operating fund, because we know that if it's a recurring expense, we've got to be able to fund that in the future. So we're mindful, but on the other hand, when there's an opportunity, a one-time purchase, we're taking advantage.
Or even in this case, so short-term, 2 or 3 years, that sort of thing.
That's very short term.
Yeah, it's short-term, but it's better than, just a 1 year, right? Okay.
thank you.
Hey, and this is, this ties back to the report that is in your packet. The largest personnel budget shows a 913,000 to the good. But keep in mind that's as of September 9th, 2021. We expect encumbrances to be an additional 968,000 that aren't booked yet. And those we're still working with our various bargaining groups, and we expect to expend the majority of that. 228,000, that ties back to the earlier slide we just saw. So these two are in alignment. School equipment facilities, this year it's a new budget item this year that we were able to fit in the budget. $200,000, we've encumbered or expended 27,000. The subtotal on that is 173. Again, as of September 9th. We're going to talk in a few minutes about the window replacement design. Window replacement at O'Malley that hopefully the MSBA will invite us as part of that program. If we're invited, we need to earmark $100,000. So temporarily, we've earmarked 100,000 in case we're invited. That leaves an available balance of 73,000 to spend on different maintenance and operational needs of the buildings.
Yes, I don't expect to have the answer tonight, but I would like to know why it will cost $100,000 to design window replacements if we're just replacing windows. Like, there should be a guy measuring these windows and making a spreadsheet of like, we have 100 windows this big, we have 20 windows this big. Like, how is it $100,000 worth of work to design? What are we designing, you guys? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
We're not designing a building, we're not renovating, we're just replacing windows. And so I'm not saying it's wrong, but as a layman, I'm going, how do we spend 100,000? If you want to pay me half that, I'll go tell you how big the windows are at O'Malley. And then I'll list of what we need, right? But
I've got that, just to your question, I've got some examples from MSBA. We have to pay for the OPM, which is a solid 15,000. And then we looked at other schools that were comparative. And through schematic design, it runs the balance from.
sure, but that's really, what is the schematic design for
Yeah.
window replacement? Like, that's measuring, right?
You guessed right. We don't know the answer to that question. I don't think,
Okay.
unless you have more than that, but
We'll get.
I still don't know it, but we can find
We'll
that
get
out. I think it's
more
more.
thorough
probably
answer.
includes what, caulking
Yeah.
goes around the window.
Bid documents have to be prepared because it has to go out for bid, so there's that.
Okay.
It's some-
Anyway,
Yeah, sure,
it
yeah,
does
yeah.
require some
Yeah.
detail.
No, sure, I
Yes.
just explain how we spend that much money designing replacement windows.
I mean, basically, if you're doing it at your house, you call up the glass company and come and say, measure up these windows and tell me what I need.
Right,
But because it's public, you have to have somebody draw it up so it can go out for bid, so everybody's bidding on the same thing.
And arguably, this building has plans that are still on file in the city. They're saying it's like,
That's
those
possible.
windows measurements exist. You know, we own those measurements were, exist in modern,
Yeah.
format.
Yeah, I was given when you're part of the program, you have to follow the MSBA rules.
Of course.
And so that's what they've indicated. We have 60 days to earmark those funds.
Yeah, I've never the earmark, you just want to make sure, like, I would just be, have an eyebrow raised as we're spending into that.
Yeah, no, I think, listen, if this all goes to
Sure.
plan, right, or all goes to, then when we ask you to expend that money, you've got to come forward with more details of what that money's gonna be spent.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll do that definitely.
The next slide, this is about the next agenda item, window replacement at O'Malley, MSBA. We applied to the program last year. We made it onto the short list. You had to have windows that were greater than 31 years of age, and our windows were about 50 years old. Currently, MSBA is doing their post-visit due diligence with all the schools on the short list. We'll receive notice if we're selected ahead of the meeting. If invited, again, we'll need to commit to funding the OPM fees and design fees up to schematic design. And we have a place that, as we just talked about, where we can draw from for the purpose of those funds. So that is it. We're hopeful, but we don't know what will happen. Any questions on that? Okay,
What was the date again?
October 27th. So I would encourage superintendent and Jonathan to keep that date open.
You and Kathy as well.
And Kathy,
That's
And keep
building.
your fingers and toes crossed
yes,
until we get that email.
That too.
yeah, that too.
So, I'm sorry to be so chatty tonight. I really want to get out of here at some point, I'm sorry. But this just hit me for the first time, so listening to Gary speak about it, because, O'Malley was always like the new building, right? But you point out, O'Malley's 50 years old, right? And so the thought I'm having is that, what we're doing right now in the elementary program, when West Parish is as old as O'Malley is now, it's supposed to be beyond its useful life. It's kind of a scary kind of thought, that, the new EG vets, when it comes online in 2 years, when it's as old as O'Malley is now, it's, done. And that's just like a kind of like a concern with the thing, like O'Malley doesn't feel old. O'Malley is like the new building still, compared to the high school and the remaining elementaries, right? And so I'm not, it's just a little bit of perspective, right? We're
Leave
gonna
it to you because you went through it. Versus us who kind of showed up on the scene.
Well, we're certainly in no position anytime soon to be replacing
No.
the middle school, right? So I'm just,
Yeah.
I was just thinking that a 50-year trigger, I was like, oh my God, we talking like, oh, West Parish last 50 years and EG Vets last 50 years. Like, you imagine if someone was like, okay, O'Malley's done. We'd be like, oh, it just got started. What do you mean? It was like built in the 70s, right? Like, I don't know.
No,
Just-
I mean, within 20 years or within 10 years, we'll have to start thinking about O'Malley. But within 20 years, it's a distinct possibility, but that's.
As we sit in a 100-plus-year-old building right now.
Right, right. So that's, but as what we do know certainly is maintenance matters,
Yeah.
and as I think we've, and this is part of that, right?
Sure.
We didn't, but no, there's somewhere down the road that none of us want to really talk about right now, I don't want to think about it right now, but it's just, it might be out there, just, and that's a.
And just as we're like, I'm not saying they're bad ideas to replace these windows, I'm saying it's a bad idea to redone the vestibule and stuff like that. As we're doing these multi-million-dollar projects repeatedly, what is is it gonna be like GHS where you're like, hey, listen, we'll continue to renovate and continue to re-renovate as necessary to keep it moving? Or is it gonna be like a West Parish Vets beam and we go, thank you for serving your purpose, but.
Yeah, I think that the reality is that the middle school and the high school academic programs are more adaptable, whereas things have changed in the elementary schools considerably in the 65, 70 years that these buildings are aged out at, whereas, you know, the middle schools and the high school are more able to be renovated.
So it's not just a matter of how tired is the building of the physical plan, also is it's the design of it, and can we still effectively convey education in this building, or is it so far, it's so ancient in the way it was set up that it's no longer an
Yeah,
effective?
well, that was one of the
facility.
points when we
Right.
talked about doing the elementary schools, is there just wasn't anything to do to them that was gonna make them work for what we're trying to do.
Right.
Whereas I think there is something you could do to, I mean, this was renovated in the 90s. You know, it seems to fit the bill for what we're trying to do.
Sure.
And O'Malley seems to be fitting the bill as what we're trying to do. It's the elementary schools that don't.
Right, but not just a plant situation, the design situation. That's a good perspective. Thank you.
And question for Gary, is part of the MSBA's visit to make sure that the building, and maybe they've already done this particular legwork, but is the building in the good enough condition that it makes sense to do windows as opposed, right?
Yes,
I would hope that's like everything we put in our maintenance plan, that they've read, that they're coming to verify that the building is in solid condition, that windows are the issue, not because the roof was done,
right.
right? So,
I mean, that's an excellent point. They came to see, and as they came, there was construction on renovating the entryway for new security. So they want to make sure that, you know, this is not going to be money spent on a building that's going to be retired in a couple of years. They see that we're investing in the building. They see that their building materials are, you know, they used well-built, really long-lasting building materials, like building, instead of drywall, they used cement block. And then brick exterior. So it's a well-built building.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, we're going to have Adam Mayo take it from here on the transportation slides.
Adam, you're there. It's good to see you. I will go back to the presentation here. That's not right.
No.
All right.
Do you minimize it? Is that why? You have to go back to your presentation. You have shrunk your presentation. That's why it's.
My presentation here. I gotta close the presentation. Sorry, folks. Give me a moment. I'm gonna superintendent be that guy. Let's see here. Oh, I see. So, all right, Adam.
Voila.
All right, sorry about that. Very slow intro. Go ahead.
No worries. So thank you first for allowing me this last minute to be here at the office while I work through some driver shortage issues, which I'll talk about briefly here in a few minutes. Just for a quick update tonight, I just want to review of where we were, where we are, and where we're going. So when we started with the pandemic, back to school learning September 20th to about April 2021, we had a bus capacity limit set by DESE at 25 students per bus, 1 student per seat. When we moved to the April 2021 full opening to the end of the school year, our bus capacity, we set ourselves at 2 students per seat, just for some more limitations. DESE had originally said in February that we could pack our buses to full capacity. but we restricted it to about 50. And then currently we are at the no limit 77 passenger buses are what we operate. We like to keep them about 65 students in grade 6 through 8 and 72 K through 5. That limits the number of 3 to a seat. We do have some students currently sitting 3 to a seat on a couple buses, but that is limited. On our August 24th board meeting, we reported that 635 students were currently on buses. Currently, with the addition of a few more today, we're at about 859 students. So between that 824 and now, we've added about 224 students to our buses. And that also includes a little bit more with the 1 mile and over free transportation change that was made at that meeting. This ranges in about a 4 to 11% increase since the report on 824 per bus. It's across the entire district with all the elementary schools, middle school. Is about each of those buses a 4 to 11% increase in those riderships. So on our ridership currently, elementary routes, we have 6 that are over 50%. We could probably even go further and say that they're at 65 to 70% right now. 6 elementary routes that are under 50% capacity. 2 at West Parish. These are some of our further out areas. 1 at one at Veterans. We had only about 20 because so many are within walking distance of veterans right now. Families are really taking advantage of that. So we were able to, as of today, start transporting the YMCA to their location up on Gloucester Crossing, an additional 20 to 23 students every afternoon so that they could attend an after school care program, which was not available to be housed at the current St. Anne's location. They were trying to use CADA, and CADA had been showing up anywhere from 3:30 to 3:45 to pick up students. No fault of anybody's, that's just their schedule. So this is working out a lot better for them. We do have an established stop up there already because we have some students moving into that Gloucester Crossing complex as of this year. And 2 at East Gloucester, numbers are below 50% capacity right now, but we are, still accepting applications and working through those as we go. 3 O'Malley school bus routes over 50%, 5 O'Malley school routes under 50%. Some of those routes we've added some stops to accommodate the under 1 mile or 1 mile and over for students. Students still have the option of taking CADA, which some families feel is better for their students, so they can utilize it during off days as well. So they just purchase a pass and utilize that bus service. So we still are at that point.
Hi, Joel.
What do you expect as far as this increase in ridership? Do you think it starts trickling down, or do you expect it to continue to increase 4 to 11% for foreseeable future?
So we're getting anywhere from about 4 to 10 applications a day. We still are working through the process of really trying to determine all students who are on our buses. Drivers are bringing names forward of students who are not on their list or registered, which, I just had one this afternoon. Child popped up, said, "I'm going to dad's," and the driver said, "You're not registered to go to dad's, you're registered to go to mom." So we're still working through some of those issues of families, basically putting the kids on the bus, not registering, and us trying to figure out who they are. The school's working through attendance processes to find out who they are. The secretaries have been wonderful to call me and say, "Johnny Smith says he's riding bus 14. I don't have him listed on my list. Can we get him added? Has the family registered?" And we start that process. So I'm hoping in the next week or so, we're really going to start to see that number kind of plateau and even out. But we are still getting them daily. I think I have 4 in the queue right now that I've got to add.
So that said, I would certainly advocate again that, maybe in 2 more weeks, So even though the bus routes are, you're saying are at like 65% rough math, it's still like 25 open seats in these buses, right? And so I really advocate as part of our whole like go yellow to go green to start considering saying, hey, listen, you know, we're gonna open this up to choice students, open it up to, you know, people less than a mile. We're not gonna create new bus stops, but if someone is choicing into West Parish and can get, and there's, you know, 20 seats on a bus, if you can get your kid to a bus stop that's on this route, you don't have to come clog our lineup. You can stand at the bus stop with them or drop them off at the bus stop. They'll get on the bus and go the rest of the way. We're not gonna come out to Lanesville to pick up the West Parish kid, but like if you're Lanesville kid can get down to Centennial Avenue or get wherever it makes sense. That may help in East Gloucester. So I just would, if the numbers plateau and it's still hovering at around the 50, but even though 65% ones, that's still, you know, 2,000 seats on the bus. There may be a handful of students who say, yeah, like I'll pick the bus up halfway to school. That's fine. You know, I don't want to sit in that line anymore. You know, I don't know. Maybe there's zero takers, but we won't know
Well,
until we
maybe
ask.
it'd be good to find out if we get a list of how many kids are choiced in, you know, what the volume might be,
Right.
you know, because, you know, it's,
So
before we offer it, we can find out.
Well, first come, first serve. I don't know. I mean, we'll figure it out. You know, it's
there's obviously choice, changing that on choice would require a school committee change of policy, okay?
Yeah.
waiver policy.
There are larger ramifications on essentially providing transportation to anyone across the district. I understand it's about getting to a school bus, or to a school bus stop, okay, but that's something that we would need to discuss further because that is the quickest way to move fully away from geographic schools and into a full school choice district, which are providing, making it easier and easier for folks to do it. And the school choice districts I've worked in, equity becomes a real significant issue in terms of access to school, who picks what school. So there's some unintended consequences that are significant to school makeup.
I'm sure you can safeguard against those. I believe in you.
I don't know a place that has safeguard against that. So it's on principle, it's a pretty clear cut principle in terms of, you know, more people on the bus. But you we would risk opening up a whole nother complexity that you so far have very purposely, not supported.
Right. Just, but 2/3 of our bus are half empty.
I understand that. I
But
understand
I
that.
think your point, and I think Adam probably will confirm this, but if somebody's that's on that route and can get, you know, go backwards to get to the bus stop, maybe those are students that would make sense to get on the bus as opposed to, the other.
Sure.
So maybe there are pieces that make sense, and administratively for Adam and the transportation and bus drivers, that there's some obvious things that will increase ridership and reduce driving to the school in some places.
So I just, to quickly spring off of that, I do understand the complexity of families being able to transport students, some families who are not able to transport students. And I'm always, I don't want to restrict somebody who may be 0.89 tenths of a mile to a school from using a school bus if that's their only mode of transportation. Is that our job is to get students to school to be able to learn. So I'm always willing to work through that and those processes, and that's a discussion we can have. I did offer to put in 5 or 6 new stops closer to West Parish along Essex Ave. This year, I emailed those families that lived under the 1 mile range who typically walk. Because of the safety concerns of Essex Ave, we had one family accept it and then decide that they were going to continue to walk. After the first day of school, they didn't take the transportation and the family had decided to walk. So we did offer that. Again, there's only one, so we are open to those and continue to try to work through those processes to add kids to the school buses.
The other, just speaking of West Parish here, because we have fuller buses, I know they're not completely full, I get that, but then we had last year, and many more kids riding the bus West Parish. The arrival and dismissal is significantly different than last year. So just, this is,
That's great.
and yeah, it really has changed. Again, I've been there, at arrival one morning, and talking to Lena, principal, Dr. Emmel, and then was actually in the line at dismissal. And, when the line started moving, because, people line up before 3 o'clock, there was one car on Concord Street. As opposed to a line, as we know,
Yeah,
last
down
year,
the fire barn.
going down, towards the fire station. So again, that's an end of one, but certainly they've noticed, the most recent challenge for West Parish has really just been getting buses there on time. That's been more of an issue than the line. So anyway, I think that's a success. It's not completed, but it's certainly progress from last year and quite a bit different than last year.
I spoke with the Ward 5 counselor today and asked him specifically if he's received any complaints about traffic at West Parish, and he said no.
Yeah.
He hasn't received any.
We'll bring that.
So quick update from, I know I'm a week behind, but September 7th started our second week at school. We started our O'Malley late routes a little bit earlier this year to accommodate the two sports activity trips or activities that will be taking place at O'Malley. So we are running two late buses and CADA for Monday through Friday, 3:30 late run. The 4:30 late run will begin in October once the O'Malley Academy starts. We started our pre-K transportation. We have one bus going there at 8:30, 11, 12, 1:30, and 2:30. We did start 2 midday high school trips going out for one of our programs there. And as I stated, we would continue to add all routes, continue to add students to all of our routes as we go through that application process.
Still more, lots happening in transportation.
Some quick updates about driver information that I'm working on now as we speak. So at 8:21, we lost a driver to a resignation that forced me to consolidate an O'Malley, Beeman, and West Parish route. The idea of that route was going to be having a spare driver available on each level or each tier of our elementary schools to cover routes as needed. That went away when we consolidated that route. We had to shift the driver from the consolidated route to a specialized transportation route to accommodate the increase in student needs there. We currently have one sub driver. We have one driver still in training, working through that process. We did get 4 bus driver applications, which we are working on right now, 3 to fully train and 1 to fast track to certification. She was a former school bus driver with Gloucester Public Schools. I have gotten waivers from the Department of Education to be able to fast track her with just 40 hours of training versus 60 and a retest on the road. So we're working through that process. We have had 2 bus monitor applications. One of them should be able to start relatively quickly. Unfortunately, 0 crossing guard applications at this point. Right at the first week of school, I have put up some yard signs across Gloucester. We did get permission from the YMCA. We have a great partnership with them to put our banner up on their fence that they have out by the Rotary. I have gotten multiple calls. Again, only 4 applications thus far, but multiple calls. I'm still waiting for some more applications come in from people that are interested in that training and moving forward with that hopefully soon.
We are meeting with the mayor and chief of police tomorrow about the park rangers potentially helping with crossing guards. So when I say Adam and I are meeting with some folks from the city, so that might be a possibility. Folks are positive about that, but I don't want to get too far ahead of this. We are having some absences coming up on bus drivers in the next few days. So that's going to make things very, very complicated. Adam is working now, or he was working, and then folks keep working after he's done here on consolidating bus routes to make sure that happens. But When we, this slide here is the most heartened I've felt since I came to Gloucester, just about, having 4 bus driver applications process is huge shit change in the past few weeks, right? And so, hoping all those work out, or at least a couple work out. And also having bus monitor applications is quite a concept. So, but more work to do there, and obviously I'm working hard on.
And I just want to bring to light too, the recent news that Governor Baker has enacted or called up the National Guard to drive school buses. I've gotten a lot of questions regarding that. I just want to be clear. They have been called up to drive 7D vehicles, which are the passenger vans, or very, very small, under 10 passenger, maybe even 7 passenger in the state of Massachusetts vehicles. So they're not actually going to be driving the large yellow school buses, which many districts across Massachusetts are facing a shortage of. We see that everywhere. I know some of my counterparts in Maine, where I used to work, have actually stopped transportation for the first month and a half of school to try to get drivers trained and in place. So they've stopped all transportation for their students. I don't want to ever have to be in that position to do that, but there are lots of things going on across the nation with driver shortages. But I just want to make sure that I clear that up, because a lot of folks are asking of, well, can't we get the National Guard to come drive our school buses? But unfortunately, they're only going to be driving the smaller 7D vehicles, which we do not operate.
Adam, which we do not use, correct?
That's correct. At this point, we do not operate any 7D vehicles.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Joel.
2 questions. As far as the sub situation, has there been any outreach to like recently retired firefighters? So I believe all have the vehicular training to drive a school bus, just to say, like, we don't need you to be a constant on a route, but we love to call you in if we're in a pinch and need someone to run. I don't know if the chief or any of the lieutenants over there can put together a list and do a little outreach, just say, hey, we're in a rough spot for a little while longer.
So
Second
though they
question-
have,
Go ahead.
sorry, so they have a fire training, fire truck training. The state of Massachusetts still requires them to hold a CDL with a P&S endorsement and to get a school bus driver certificate. The federal government just changed entry-level driver training requirements. So anyone who doesn't hold any of those is required to go through a set number of hours of training behind the wheel and classrooms. So those rules are quickly evolving and changing. So we would still need to put them through classroom training and behind the wheel training for them to be able to get their school bus certificate and drive a school bus.
I can also, we can ask though, we could.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's not as,
Not as easy.
not as easy as perhaps we hoped, right? But some of those folks are used to driving big vehicles and.
Right, if you have that ladder truck 50 miles an hour down Prospect Street, I bet you can drive a school bus safely down Prospect Street,
That is the requirement.
And as you say, have them on in case of pinches, like, absences or.
Okay, the second question I have, basically, we were talking, I think, in our last meeting about just like the protocols around pickup, drop off, at least to parents, getting bus drivers to, learn their students. Adam, do you see, is there any break in protocol? Is there any reduction in our ability to follow through with the procedures we kind of talked about, despite the fact that we kind of have, this ever-changing situation? Are you able to make sure those protocols are still being followed by the drivers despite these changes?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of discussions. We've had actually this week we did a training on drops and picks with our safety trainer. The concerning part is every time you remove a driver from their normal route to cover another route or something else, that's potentially 30 to 55, 60 kids that they don't know or don't know yet. So we are now basically starting back at square one. So tomorrow I have a sub on, if I have a sub on a bus, they're not used to that, those students on the bus, so they're learning those students. So every time that we rotate drivers or remove a driver to consolidate routes, it just adds more areas where we have to be more vigilant in our drops and picks. We are really working with students across the board to really understand and make sure that they know their bus stops, that they know where they're supposed to be seating. The administration has worked with us and they work with our drivers. If they see a sub, they're notified. They work with that sub to make sure the students are in the correct spots. There's changes, they make that notification. But the continued problem is if you don't have the same driver on all of our on the route every day, it's hard for them to continue that process this first couple of weeks.
So I think we talked about connecting the bus software with the communication software so that, would that also be something where you could notify and say, you know, hey, everyone on bus 4 at Beaman, you know, there's a sub today, or, you know, to kind of alert parents, like, you know, please make sure you're like paying extra attention that your kid gets off the bus properly because the bus driver is, you know, is that a communication that could be looped in when these two systems are connected?
Yeah, so it will allow the software here from my desk to be able to change a driver, change a bus number, and alert families that are registered of that change. So there'd be a different driver today, it'll be a different bus today, it may be late today, whatever it may be, we could put those alerts in there so that families are aware of that.
We are reaching out to kindergarten families. Adam has a draft of a notice to them, just to help them, you know, help continue to educate them on, you know, just how they can help and how we're trying to help work with them. So the committee asked about that last week, and that will be going out. So, yeah.
And Adam, does any of this smooth out a little bit? I mean, I assume by now the kids still do not have any bus pass, and I know they end up with a bus pass with their picture. Does it, right? Doesn't it have a picture? Or is that
So
just
in the past, they've worked with O'Malley at O'Malley School. They've worked with the photo company to put a bus pass indicator on the student IDs. Elementary schools, I don't believe in this district they get student IDs, but if they do, we'll be working with those students at that aspect. I don't think in the elementary school that maybe they have, and I just am not unaware that they've received anything physical. It's what I'm looking at to see what we can purchase or what we can do to actually print something for a student to be able to identify who they are or have bus information on that.
Thanks.
In terms of smoothing out, it is smoothing out, and it does smooth out as we get through these first couple of weeks always because of the hard work of a lot of folks, right? But it is always bumpy in the beginning as folks are learning all different, as every single person in the chain is learning something, right? But certainly if you talk to principals and school secretaries and others, it's definitely on the right path, and like it is every year. But we've also certainly identified some things where some systems pieces, communication and that sort of thing. But you know, communication with parents, communication about your changes, delays, new driver substitutes, all those pieces. You know, that I think we can improve and continue to improve. So it's been yeah. So you know, learning from the bumps is really the whether transportation or food service or in a classroom is what we got to do.
The next, just quickly update on our bus update. When I typed this yesterday, so we've had, according, if you've seen the news, obviously the incident on 9/7 with the multiple vehicles across Rockport and Gloucester being damaged by the high-powered rifle pellets. Our school bus was where the incident either started and or ended. So we had several windows shot out of our one of our school buses, another windshield damage, and the prying of a back door of one of our buses all took place on that weekend. So we came into 3 buses out of service right now to get those repairs done. What glass has finally come in today. We are getting ready to take the bus over to get it fixed or planning on it this morning. When we arrived this morning, somebody had also taken a large 2x4 and smashed out 2 additional windows on our bus and damaged the frame of one of the windows. So now we are in the process of waiting for 2 additional windows of our school bus to be repaired or sent in to be repaired, so that bus will continue to be out of service. We'll be fixing the other things hopefully this week. But this is just an ongoing concern with safety of our school buses parked over in that corner, so close to the skate park. So that was the incident this morning. I think that was emailed out to everybody. The police responded and took an additional report of that incident.
Do we not have cameras on school grounds that pick this stuff up? No, the guys were caught at 9/7, but I said they got pulled over. Because they were driving like, I mean.
We do not have cameras in our parking lot.
It blows my mind in 2021, anyone can vandalize anything still and not be on like camera from some angle, you know?
Well, that might be,
And the
no, in all
bus-
seriousness, I mean, just communicating with the police chief today, they're following with the report and also, can have some patrols there, but patrols can't be there,
Yeah.
as we know. But that's maybe something worthwhile to do. Yeah, thoughts,
The
just thoughts on
buses
that?
have kind of moved from one side to the other, depending
Yeah.
upon the year as well. I thought they used to be closer to the school for
Right.
that very
Right.
reason.
Yeah,
And I think they moved 2 years ago, maybe for circulation of the cars. And there's light over on the skate park.
Yeah.
yeah, but the skate park doesn't have a camera. I mean, that's the city of Gloucester thing, I just assume you're on camera all the time when you go outside these days. You're on camera downtown, like, I don't know. Something to think about. This seems to me kind of like anachronistic that in 2021, I can be on school property and not be highly monitored by cameras. I would assume that, incorrectly, obviously, that. Thankfully, no one watches these B&F meetings, so again, not like, oh yeah, no, we don't have cameras in school, you can go ahead and.
No, I think it's up to the committee to consider that and,
Yeah.
and then I can talk to Adam and look at the committee about it. But it definitely, these instances are a concern because as you can see, they put buses out of service and that then makes transportation more complicated.
It helps you catch the people that do things. It doesn't, nobody's sitting there watching this.
No, but even if there's like, I don't know what signs do for deterrent, but there's like clearly a camera and a sign is like, smile, you're on camera. Maybe like kid thinks twice for picking up that board and beating the school bus with it, Maybe he doesn't, I don't know.
Maybe that's.
But anyway.
And then just our continued work as we talked about, working on that pickup and drop off times and arrivals at our schools. We are picking up more students, more loading and unloading times, checking of students. Those are extending the drive times. We are continuing to experience the bridge, traffic throughout town, and just getting buses from one side of Gloucester to the other has been a challenge. So we are continuing to work on those. What can we do to adjust those times? There's just very little travel time built into the school bell schedule with transportation. So trying to work through those, get a bus from O'Malley to Magnolia and back to Beaman in 30 minutes or less is a little bit of a challenge. So we're looking at those. We continue to work with the administration, families, and school bus drivers to support student identification, bus stop identification, and processes around the school bus, which we just talked about. We are having the challenge with driver shortage and ensuring that it's the same driver on the route every day, which is a huge part of this identification process. Is we have had to limit the number of buses that can leave for sports before 3:30. The request has been 2:45, 3 o'clock, but we do not have drivers available to meet the needs of those. So we've had to work with athletics a lot to push back times, look at alternative methods to get athletics out. Our biggest challenge, and it happened today, is golf, because there's not lights on golf courses. So there's a limit to the number of hours they can play and depart, the latest they can depart. Again, we continue to add students to our bus routes. Again, our challenge continues to be a coverage of routes when a driver or monitor is out sick, having that lack of drivers and subs.
I want to raise just one thing, just for the committee's awareness, is that, and this is a collective bargaining agreement challenge, which is, and Adam, help me out here if I mistake this, is that on the charters, athletic charters, drivers can choose to do those rather than their regular route in the afternoon. And that's allowed. And that's a real challenge, obviously, because if they choose that, then we have this domino effect that we talked about this afternoon. So that's something we have to, look into and change at some point, because the priority's got to be, I believe the priority has got to be, make sure our regular routes are completed before charters are possible for athletics, and athletics are other events that happen in the afternoon and need transportation. So, but that's a sort of a built-in challenge, a challenge that's built in unintentionally.
Right.
Adam, did I do that? Explain that
Yeah,
appropriately?
it's luckily last year with the early release, we were able to successfully cover most of our athletic trips in the afternoon. Drivers were done by 1 and 2 o'clock. Buses could leave easily. This year with West Parish and veterans getting done at 3 o'clock, that 2:45, 3 o'clock time means that if we have 2 buses leaving, potentially I would need to have 2 subs to fill the seats of those 2 drivers going to do the charters. But then again, it adds another level of insecurity for making sure that it's a constant driver with the students on a daily basis. So if a student's bus route is, continually having a sub in the afternoon on Monday and Thursday, and then next week on Tuesday and Friday, it just creates a lot of uncertainty, and I don't enjoy doing that way. So I've worked really hard with Brian in athletics to really, hone in and say, I'm sorry, but we're not going to have a bus until 3:30 at this point.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Appreciate your ongoing work on this. I know
Adam,
it's-
thank you. You've done a lot of work on transportation. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on to DPW, open and closed tickets. I want to say that DPW has done a phenomenal job. We have 156 items that are closed tickets as of, we just ran the report yesterday, September 14th. Many were closed within 1 day. We do have some open tickets, not unusual. Just 2 pages, 28 items as compared to the closed tickets of 156. 13 are a little stubborn. They're greater than 30 days. Some of those items we like to potentially contract out with a contract plumber, but we want to have that discussion first with school committee as well as with Mike Hale, and try to reduce the number of tickets that are over 30 days. And then there's some other trades, explore contracting out with other trades as well. Let's see. As I said, we have an upcoming meeting with Mike Hale where we'll discuss that. And just to let you know that we have $73,000 available in the facilities budget to possibly use to get the work done. So want your thoughts on that, and open up for discussion.
So you say we have 70, that's in our budget, the 73,000, or is that in a revolving cover?
That's in the general fund.
If we
Yeah.
go here, that's just,
Oh, okay, so that is that 73,000.
Yeah, that's after earmarking 100,000, and as Joel pointed out, that number could be less. Well, that's right now is ballpark.
So, but Mike Hale would, or DPW would oversee these subcontractors. It wouldn't be our responsibility to.
I would hope that would be the case.
Yeah, because we don't actually have somebody that's, you know,
Yeah, so that, and right, again, you sort of Gary's floating this idea to get a sense of the subcommittee about whether that, because as, and this happened last year too, it's just that, there's really one, I think one plumber, on the city's payroll. And it just happens that, those are the things that happen, right?
Well, and it seems these have been on, but other ones come on and off, not necessarily plumbing. My point is, if we can resolve
Right.
these, then maybe the list of what is required from our staff plumber, city staff plumber can work through
Mhm.
regular. And only, then they can maybe think about a particular situation that could be best assigned to a contractor and
Yes.
get it done once in a while as opposed to a significant expense over time.
Mhm. Right. We just want to pull out some of the items that's been on the list for some time and get those done and off the list.
so are you saying that those 13 open tickets that are around 30 days are by and large plumbing?
There are different trades. Some of them are plumbing. We'll look at some of the other items. Why don't we go to that list?
So the auto shop seems to be the one that's like, I'm not saying getting ignored, but can't seem to get there. They have a ticket that's
Exactly.
357 days open, valve leaking, sinking large. This one is, this ticket is 334 days old, and this ticket says the sink was taken apart last year, but not put back together again. So that means the year before this ticket was put in, a sink got taken apart. And a year has gone by since someone said, hey, last year the sink got taken apart, it hasn't been put back together. And then there's one about flaking paint coming down in the shops. So that seems to be, and I think the leaks too, there's a leak that's going into the guidance, but the other leaks, the only other leaks in this building are over in the shops also. So that just seems to be the area of most concern as far as like tickets that have been languishing that don't seem to be minor. It's not like, oh, hey, this light switch doesn't work. It's like, oh, this thing's taken apart, this bag valve doesn't work. This,
Yeah, that's a perfect example. The sink that was taken apart. For whatever reason, let's just get it resolved and
Sure,
get it
yeah.
put back together. If it requires a contract plumber to do that, let's investigate the cost and.
Especially as we're trying to like, push the vocational school as a viable alternative, right?
Well, exactly, and this is impacting what they're doing educationally, so that's a good use to get it done.
But I want to emphasize that on most tickets, DPW is getting those completed within 1 day,
Right,
and they're doing a phenomenal job.
The closed ticket list is huge.
Yeah,
yeah, and as you
Yeah.
say, things come on and off, on and off. It
Right.
just seems that there's
there's a few
one
stubborn.
person in
Yeah,
one particular skill, expertise,
Yeah,
and so,
yeah,
we don't do
exactly.
so much.
Yeah,
And those flickering hallway lights, I'm just curious whether like, there's one at West Parish and one at the high school also. I'm curious whether those are, again, whether it's a manpower issue, like, oh, we need an electrician beyond what the staff can do, or it's a matter of triage saying, yeah, they're flickering, but they're on most of the time, so we're dealing with other things first. I can't glean that from this.
Mhm.
Let's highlight that one when we
Yeah.
DPW. Okay,
Yeah.
can you write that down, please? So
Definitely.
Well, I think that, if we have funds available and these things are difficult for DPW to deal with, we should spend the money. and get it
Yes.
fixed.
I'm nervous about what this, how much that 73 covers.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
what
Well,
is-
I would say, have Mike pick, highlight the ones that he thinks that they're not gonna get to.
yeah, big
Right.
chunk,
Yeah.
but small bits. I like to have it small bits and get a few items out of the way.
Yeah.
All right, that's good to see that there's consensus on that. We'll definitely have a conversation with Mike to pursue that. Let's go on to the next agenda item.
great, 1 second.
Okay, this is yes or three. We talked about this last time at B&F. And this time it's the same items on here that we talked about. We just put some numbers to it. We've social, emotional, mental health. We have some guidance, additional guidance, school adjustment counselors over several years. Those amount to $540,000. We've added a BCBA, a teacher, special ed teacher, and a special education administrator at the high school. Over several years, those three are going to cost $846,000. And then the list goes on, as you can see, instructional support, and those are the math interventionist, as well as literacy interventionist. And that amounts to $420,000. Again, we have some instructional paraprofessionals, other supports. I put in the food service directors, salary. Now we have to pay, because this is these are federal dollars. We're required to pay the employer share of MTRS and Medicare. And that amounts to almost $200,000. You know, with contract cleaning, what is interesting is, you know, one day we think that pandemic is going to end real soon, and the next minute it flares up. And so we had to, so we were back and forth on cleaning. You know, first we had it in, and then ESSER 2 took it out. Now we put it in for ESSER 3, 5 contract cleaning positions. We contract out with the same company. It was a 3-year contract. And it's called, the company is Advanced Maintenance Solutions. And that's part of the contract costs, and along with the tenants works and tutoring, amounts to just shy of $400,000.
On the cleaning, what we're doing is we have about half as much as we did last year in terms of additional support. And so we expect that to also
Taper down.
exactly.
Yeah. So I worked real close with Ben on that, and obviously we have to work with Jeff, you know, in terms of, you know, determining what is the proper amount of cleaning, depending upon the pandemic and its course. Supplies. This is what Joe brought up, some instructional software that some of it was in our operating budget. We took some of that, like Renaissance Learning, and moved it into the ESSER 3. And the literacy program is a new program that's about $400,000. We did the math program.
And with that for literacy, as you may remember, we're piloting 2 K-5 literacy curriculums this year. And so what this is over the course of 3 years is first that piloting this year, but also then the actual curriculum supplies for that, you know, and so for the next 2+ years. And that's a place that would be operating budget clearly, as Gary was saying, that we can put on ESSER, you know, and then it also isn't an ongoing expense. It ends after a couple of years as we get up and running, in terms of, you know, the primary materials. So that's one example of how we can do that. There's also some, as folks know, some ongoing. We have additional hardware costs because we now will be supplying at 3rd grade and 8th grade Chromebooks, and while we have always budgeted for the 9th grade, I mean 8th grade, we hadn't doing 3rd grade, so that's another place that in the short term we can use some of the federal dollars, but then have to build that in over time.
And that's in that 841.
Yes, exactly right. In terms of process here, so again, we're sort of adding more detail to you about what our current plans are. We have to continue to do some more process on perhaps with the program subcommittee, but also with some staff and some community input as well, community partner input. We have got good input from parents from the springtime, and that all goes into the and then additional staff input as well. So,
And this all comes to, this process, these come to a conclusion in October. We have to submit it October 4th. But again, as we submit this and get approved, we can amend it down the road.
Yep.
So it's not cast in, and this is a 3-year deal. FY 22, 23, 24.
So these salaries are for 3 years. These are for
Yes.
individuals for 3 years. Of, so it's about what, 2.2 million dollars in salaries, so $700,000 a year.
Yeah.
Um,
So, we have 3 years to, can we work it into the operating budget?
and some we will and some we won't, very honestly. So,
So these people are being hired with that knowledge
yeah,
that it's a grant funded
Yeah,
position
yes,
and it may
yeah,
not last
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
May not, as long as the funding is running, we can guarantee the job, but when it dries up, we can't. I do want to mention that we do have left facility improvements, and I have another slide on that. We have 550,000, and these are some ideas, but I like your input. I like the input of the B&F subcommittee. We have needs for playground at Beaman and Plum Cove. As you know, West Parish has a new playground, 5 years old now, but relatively new. We have the veterans, East Gloucester is going to get a new playground. We wanted the thought was to have equity between the buildings, have a new handicapped accessible playground at Beaman for both regular ed and special ed students to access, and the same at Plum Cove. So those are just ideas. And then what's been on the list, and quite frankly, what gets on the list with DPW is items that, like air conditioning, roofs, items that keep the building running. Something that is optional, but would be nice, doesn't get on the list, and it won't get on the list until, there's some available funding from a grant. Here's what James has been asking for 3 years that I've been here, to enclose the walkway between the auto shop and the main building. Right now, you can't get through, the doors are locked. And the students would have to go outside and through the main front entrance. So this is just a suggestion, but I like to have some discussion from the committee, school committee members about what are your thoughts?
I know James has definitely talked about enclosing from a safety perspective and all that. I mean, there's probably no reason ideally it would have been enclosed, knowing, it wasn't 2 separate buildings. I mean, it's really all part of one. I also think over time, many more students go back and forth because, some of the engineering classes go into the 3D printer lab. It's not just vocational programs using all that, and which is what we want to happen, is more access to those, to those opportunities. So I think this is a good place for it.
Yes, John.
So this is one of the things I struggle with, because so certainly, the playground stuff I get, because they definitely need new playgrounds. But and I'm not suggesting we don't do that, but what concerns me is that we have, we have these funds and we're gonna go rebuild these playgrounds. you know, to kind of bring them up to where things are going. Like, if you go to West Parish, I mean, to be fair, I haven't been there since August, but back in August, West Parish Pike is rough. There's like chunks of ground, the foam missing, like it's in rough shape. It has not been, it looks, it's used heavily because it's a school that's used for recess every day, right, by 300 kids. But it's, you know, it's kind of, I'm having a hard time being like, oh, well, we're gonna be building these new playgrounds while West Parish is already becoming, you know, what I'd argue is, you know, potentially unsafe or on its way to being unsafe in certain areas. We're talking about enclosing this walkway. Meanwhile, we're like trying to scrape 73 grand together to get paint to stop falling and a sink put back together after 2 years, right? So like, it's funny that we have, you know, where the new shiny stuff always kind of, you know, when we do have money, gets this attention. And these things directly relate to areas in our district that right now are suffering a maintenance issue, right? And so I'm just curious whether it makes sense to be, you know, enclosing the walkway to the auto shop in the main building, or instead like firming up and making sure that that 73 grand doesn't cover everything that needs to get done to repair what's in place now. We finish repairing the auto shop before we spend money building something new. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm missing the forest of the trees here. It just, you know, it bounces in my head like, oh.
Well, could the extra money be used to pay for the OPM for the design work at O'Malley, and then free up that money for repairs?
Yes, I believe so.
Maybe that
Yes.
kind of would be how to get there.
Right, I just want to say like, great, let's build a new hallway, but we have hallways here that like are either leaking or flickering lights. We can't get those done, but we can build a new hallway, right? Like that part always kind of sits weird.
Well, I think the good news is there's a couple buckets where hopefully we can get some of these things done that we've been waiting for a long time to
Right.
get done, right? You know, the ticket items seem to be just a backlog
Sure.
of capacity. We've been hearing about the Beaman playground for at least a couple of years.
No, that needs a
and,
playground.
And we've been hearing about this walkway for quite a while.
So the walkway issue is it's covered, but it's not enclosed.
It's prohibited walls.
Because it's you can go out the door at the end of the hallway, but you can't get back in.
Well, and James has said they block it open, so that's the safety issue as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, so that they don't have to walk around to the front door.
Right, which represents a safety, right? We're building $1 million safe entrance, and then a shop kid, right?
Yeah, it's leaving the door open.
So yes, I'm not saying these are bad ideas, but it's tough for me, like, oh yeah, we're gonna like bring, you know, shiny new hallway down to the auto shop where paint's falling on the students' heads, and there's a sink in the corner, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, the question is whether there's some way to resolve the safety issue without building a building around it.
right.
Yeah.
But you need to put some money into somebody thinking about it.
Yeah, well, I don't know what
Needs
the
to
answer
come up
is,
with
but I mean, the
options.
issue is, I mean, I don't have any problem with the kids having to walk outside for 50 feet to, you know, to get from one place to the next. The question is, the problem is the safety issue, not kids being exposed to
Yeah.
cold for.
Yeah,
you know,
for
8
sure.
seconds.
It's really the locked door
Yeah,
is the issue.
Yeah.
And that's the safety issue.
yeah.
I like these three things on the list.
Have we reached out to building principals? Yeah.
No. We need to.
Well, wait, ask your question again?
We reached out to building principals yet to be like, hey, listen, there might just be a touch of money somewhere. Is there something your building needs?
Yeah, so we.
But James is
we-
one pushing
no,
the hallway,
We,
right?
I mean, the reason Gary knows is because we sat down with James last year as part of the.
Sure.
The planning process there in the winter into spring, you know, budget, and that's also one of the reasons we built in the $200,000 for capital expenses, so we have, and I think I've said before, but I'll say it again, like, they weren't quite used to having that question asked of them, you know?
Sure.
So they gave some answers, and then they gave more answers later.
That's why our desks and things haven't been replaced for so long, because people just stopped asking.
Right, so I think part of that is keep on asking the question, which we need to every year, obviously, and then have the universe of things, and you know, the universe of things is then the universe of things. Now, that might be added to sometimes, you know, and will be added to, you know, year to year, but but we want to get through that universe of things, you know. And I think it's a good point to talk about. Let's not forget the maintenance of things, the upkeep of things. Well, we have this opportunity that you know that we don't always have, you know.
Right, that's enough. If you go to, you know, Principal Janoti and go, hey, I have great news. We're gonna build a brand new playground. And she's like, that is great, but oh my God, you had that money. Could you please instead, you know, deal with the XYZ that is, you know.
The modulars.
No, and you know that the two things on the top of the list are what we've been talking about.
Okay.
So that's that, yeah. Yeah, just on this, just to give you an update, you know, we intend to work through with DPW and Mike, just about things like the modulars and that sort of stuff this fall. We had a meeting planned for last week that fell apart on because the school side for very, very good reasons. So we have to, you know, that's gonna be, we're gonna keep working on that, but just so you know that a little bit delay on that forward progress right now.
Okay, I just want to go back just a little bit on the positions that were, that all this is. Some of these positions got added this summer, right? In terms of like the middle school curriculum person and things like that. And so I'm wondering,
When you say added, because that was approved in the operating budget,
okay, yes.
yeah,
But
or do you mean like hired?
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess from a personnel perspective,
Uh-huh.
should we be having a personnel discussion as to kind of the impact of what these positions, what we're expecting? In other words,
Yeah.
we're talking about the financial impact. It would be nice to give visibility to the educational impact of the use of these funds.
Yeah, yeah.
From a positive, obviously a positive
Right,
perspective. Just so we have that on, you know, in a public meeting. where
Sure, yeah, I think
discuss it.
that's a very good idea, very helpful.
Put that
There's
on your program agenda.
program, there's personnel. You guys decide, we'll be
One
there.
over the other.
Yeah, but I think that'll be helpful. You know, what we'll do some of this, some of what you're seeing happening now is ESER 2 and then becomes ESER 3 as a
Right.
continuation.
Correct. yeah.
But, you know, regardless of what pot it's in, I think it's very helpful for us to sort of get folks up to date on some of the things we're doing. And I think, I don't think there won't be any surprises. We talked about all along the way, but just how it's sorting out. I think will be helpful.
Right, and also like there's a lot of money there for tutoring, right?
Right.
Which from a parent perspective, you know, it'd be nice for the parents to know what supports are out there and you know, when it applies and when, you know, what we're hoping to accomplish. I mean, we obviously know there's the learning, you know, catching kids up
Right.
and all that, but you know, just to have an open discussion that's about the educational piece.
Great, that's very helpful.
Excellent point. Now we turn to the revolving funds.
It's pretty good turn to follow. Yeah, that.
I think your modular meeting fell apart.
This is a
Sorry.
360 look at the revolving funds. Food service, this is a point in time. And we're looking at the revolving funds and we notice these are the major revolving funds. They're all in real good shape, really good shape. Food service, 72,000. So as we go throughout the year, we're going to revisit this on a quarterly basis and look at and make sure that these revolving funds maintain their balances, positive balances. Because we want to, you know, we don't want this to go into the negative. We want to make sure that we have enough funds to keep providing the service to the schools for athletics, food service, transportation. And we tap in the school choice. We expend some salaries on the school choice. Preschool, we have supplies that are purchased and then the tuition goes in and that can pay for a few positions as well. Circuit breaker helps out with a lot of the costs for out of district tuition, as well as some transportation. And non-resident tuition, we don't have too much in that revolving fund as we did in the past years. So happy to entertain any questions regarding revolving funds that cycle throughout year by year, so they don't end, they keep going. Okay. Moving on to the last item on the agenda. And budget transfers. We had 3 budget transfers in the month of August. We tapped into the salary savings because we had some needs. And we'll get to those needs on the next slide. But here we can see that we used it for the district office, contract services, office supplies, and tech instructional hardware. We had additional hires through the operating budget, and we needed some additional hardware, computers and telephone to outfit the new hires. So let's turn to the next slide. Moving costs. Remember, we moved a lot of furniture to St. Anne's, and St. Anne's was needed for the new swing space. And then we had to move the furniture to pods. And then from the pods, because we're back to school, normal, regular school, the principals wanted their furniture back from the pods. So that created a lot of logistics, and we needed to spend some money on moving costs. Technology supplies were needed, as I said, to outfit the new hires. And then we temporarily purchased Apple Minis that were earmarked for ESSER 2, but the amendment didn't take effect in the Munis system. So we needed to park it there until the Munis system caught up and was adjusted for the amendment that was approved. So there you have it. The reasons why we made those transfers. We'll need a motion, but before we have the motion, I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
What, I know like at kindergarten level, we purchased, what happened to the furniture we purchased to be COVID compliant, and where did that all go?
Do you mean purchase that in the springtime?
No, I mean like, I know that, like, I know kindergarten got these little mini desks, and I don't know if there's other grade levels that also got certain things to like.
What kindergarten got was sort of like on the floor seats and like bucket stuff.
And they little, I'm just curious, I know we bought something, I was curious where they went. I was curious what happened to the COVID furniture.
I don't know where those are right now, very honestly.
I'm curious where our chairs
We
went.
could find out. I think those are still at the central office building. Mr. Pope is not buying these wooden chairs, they're very comfortable.
They're not very warm either.
Sorry.
Inspires a quick meeting though, right?
That is a benefit. No, most of the furniture we purchased last year, and you may have to remind me of other ones, but was in the springtime to go to back to the regular stuff, and that was also actually you did the dual purpose of replacing old and outdated furniture.
Okay.
So, for example, we bought a lot of tables, but also chairs and desks for mailing. Those are fully used at this point.
You know, the reason why we're using the furniture, the COVID furniture, is for we need to have the distance at lunchtime to have 3 feet apart. And so the tables, we're not using cafeteria tables. So at both the high school, that's thank you, O'Malley, they're using those single desks.
Oh, sure, yeah, okay.
And I think, so it's being utilized. I mean, the new purchases are being utilized, but we're also still using some of the old furniture as well.
Yeah. I love walking by desks I sat in 7th grade. That were 20 years old when I sat in them.
No,
So
I
are
don't
we
think
not
that's exactly
storing-
what's happening.
Are we not paying for storage right now for
We
much?
still have some storage available, but I need to remove some of the furniture in the little wrestling room here. Or in
O'Malley.
O'Malley, yeah. So I need some temporary space. So I'm still have,
We would take our chairs back.
I think they're in the conference room, aren't they? At 2 Blackboard?
You gonna put them here in the library?
yeah, I don't have them
Kiss them
stored.
goodbye.
I don't have those stored anywhere, so they're.
Did you see the size of the carriage bolts holding some of these tables together?
We'll look into where those chairs are.
We'll look into it, yeah.
Yeah.
Comfort is important as you're sitting here for hours. Yeah, but we'll get an answer on where the chairs are.
I'm really kind of joking about it.
Well, that's a
The
good
Pope is
question.
not.
That's why he's not running again, he said.
I was joking, but Jonathan isn't.
So, do you need a motion?
Yeah, I need a motion on the transfers.
Can I move to recommend the full school committee to approve all 3 transfers?
Second?
Discussion? Hearing none, Maria, we need a vote for this.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
and Mr. Pope.
Yes.
All right, well, that's all the agenda items. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up that we would put on the next agenda? All good with you, Cody? All's good?
All's
Okay.
good.
Thanks. Okay,
Okay, I'll make a motion for we adjourn.
Second.
okay, Maria?
Kathy,
Yes?
Joel,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.